as one antidote that is not toxic is to be calm, kind, and creative. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but I also know that it works. And the more you actually engage in those behaviors, the less you will be bothered by these entities. It's almost like a bug repellent. When you do engage in being calm, kind, and creative, that connects you more to the actual true cosmos, the web of light. And once we do that, it makes us stronger, and they don't want to be around individuals that are strong. They're only looking for those that they can prey on that are weak.
They are attracted to the weak. They're like wolves attacking the wounded in the pack.
Right.
And it's not all of us. Sometimes it's all of a sudden. I mean, all of a sudden voices appear, but usually what I've seen, it's fairly gradual. And they will act, they'll tell the person, pick up that pen, or turn right or bend down, like they're driving a new car and trying the controls, how much control they have on it.
Yeah.
So once they get in there, it's a battle for control. So the patients who realize that these voices are not them at least stand a fighting chance. The ones who don't know, they're just open targets. And the ones who are convinced that these things are hallucinations and they're psychotic and their minds are broken, they're the worst off of the bunch.
Right, because they have no tools to actually deal with it.
They have no tools. They don't even realize, they know there's a problem, and they believe psychiatry that it's biological, and there's absolutely no proof that's the case. Matter of fact, there's a lot of proof that it isn't. They haven't found any biological markers for schizophrenia. They can't see anything different in brains. There's nothing there that's showing it's physical. But they're insisting that it is. They will, like fish, they'll throw this thought and that thought into your head to try to get a reaction. And when they do, they'll throw more in. So if something goes wrong, they come along and dump gasoline on the fire. They want to generate that negative emotional energy, and then the schizophrenics I worked with, they said they could feel it disappearing. They could feel it leaving. And that's what they're after. That's why the thought stream of psychotic patients is completely negative. Nothing good goes in there. It's all paranoid, scary, frightening, and they're just draining these guys. And they hit them hard, and then these guys, a lot of them are so weak they can't even get out of bed in the morning. So anything Sherry came up with, we were both looking at this same phenomena at different times, and I saw that the voices would use virtually any lie, anything that they could put into the patient's head that would generate a negative emotional reaction. Now, there's two things I've seen. The voices usually start inside the patient's head, so they only hear them there. But when they get stronger and they have control of that patient and they're no longer worried about losing that control, they move outside of their heads and they talk to them from outside of their body like they're hearing it right in their ear, or they're hearing somebody talk to them right in front of them. So in that case, I don't know. I mean, they're outside. I don't know whether that connection, I mean, it couldn't be a physical connection because other people would hear it, and they still don't.
And I got all these needles and electricity and going through me, and here comes the voices now, and they're like, they're pretty upset. And I said, you know what? You're not going to win. I know that this is how this is all going to end, and you lose.
Well, they don't like electricity either. They do not like electric
I know, you
shocks.
told me about that. I know, but here's what was really here. I'll tell you what else they don't like is being laughed at.
Oh yeah,
because they are talking to me, and I started laughing, and they said, "What's so?" Well, I said, "What's so?" They said to me, "What's so funny?" And I said, "You are." And their reaction, they were so shocked by what I was saying, the way I said it. It was so funny to me that I laughed for the next half hour straight. Now, the way it's set up for the therapy was, this therapist, you come in, put on the thing, and it's very quiet, dimly lit, so that I could relax fully. Now she hears me laughing to the point of just being hysterical. So she comes in, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I'm really fine." I said, "Yeah." I mean, and because I still had like 20 minutes to go, she goes, "Okay." And she shuts the door, and I can't stop it. I'm like laughing and laughing and laughing. And then when I came out, she goes, I go to pay her. She goes, "No. It's this one's on me." She goes, "You have absolutely made my day." She goes, "I don't know what's going on, but man," she says, "you made me feel so good." And I said, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. There's just something happening." She goes, I know.
She could feel it.
Yeah, she's like, "Just keep doing whatever you're doing. Just keep doing." I'm like, "Oh my God, this is really weird." And I drove away, and I was still laughing about it. And it wasn't a sadistic thing. It really, really was funny. It's like, man, they are that weak.
You were supposed to be terrified. Yeah, you were supposed to be terrified.
Yes, and they didn't know how to deal with it. It was really, it was comical. So anyway, the bottom line is this: we have an ability to combat them or defeat them or whatever, but it isn't like a normal thing. Like, okay, so you were saying like this: if they are a fire, you don't pour gasoline on it with more negative emotions and behavior. So what is the opposite? What would be the water that you pour on the fire? And that's when I was divinely guided to put this very, 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 very simple thing. And some people say, "That's too simple, Robert." Well, guess what? It isn't. This really is the antidote. Being calm, kind, and creative are three things that we can do that defeat their control over us through negative emotions and thoughts, ultimately, and actions, because we act on those thoughts. So anyway, I just had to share that with you. Oh, and by the way, producer Bill is in the background. I hope he's actually looking for this, because as you were talking about the voices, it made me remember our producer Bill has an audio. What do they call that? When you record something on a device, a voice that isn't there. I mean, physically wasn't there, but it picks up a voice, EM something or other, EMV.
It was a Class A. It was a Class A EVP.
Wow.
EVP. Thank you. Yes, and what did it say to you, Bill?
Actually, I was with a friend who's a paranormal investigator and a friend from the UK, and it says my name twice. It sounds like a young woman's voice.
Well, a young woman voice saying, Bill. Yes. It's creepy. Man, it's creepy. It gives me the chills just thinking about it. But that is a perfect demonstration, Jerry, of what you're talking about. Further proof that these things do exist outside. I mean, because obviously it's not. If that voice has to be external to Bill. He didn't even hear it. It just showed up on the recording. It was
There's two things that come to mind real quick.
Go ahead.
There was one patient I was talking to when I was working psych crisis in the ERs. And she was hearing voices, and she was what psychiatry would consider psychotic. But I was able to communicate with her and connect with her. So she comes back, we go into the interview room, and she said, "I have never seen more dark entities than I saw while I was in that emergency room before they brought me back to the psych annex." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said there were dark entities sucking on everybody in there. She said, I watched one was hanging off a guy's broken arm, and I watched a doctor give one patient his diagnosis, and as he was giving that diagnosis, black frogs were falling out of his mouth. And then she turned around and she looked at me and she said, "If he believes what that doctor is saying, he will get that disease." And I was just blown away. I was like, whoa.
There are old, I'm going to say medieval artwork, like woodcuts of people that are being exorcised, that these demon spirits are coming out, and they are depicted as lizards, little small black lizards. Being
that's interesting.
So how would they know? I mean, look, there's evidence to all of this stuff.
It might be that reptilian stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what the Gnostics said, that there was two kinds that had come here and infected or invaded and infected our consciousness and were distracting us from our spiritual path. And that was one that looked like an embryo, the other one that looked like reptilian. So I'm not saying that's the only thing, but look, since it's been a while since you and I talked, all right, one of the other things that happened was, I told you the story about the boy's life I saved in Malibu.
Yes.
And that, you remember after I did that, I went up into the mountains that night and I had an out-of-body experience, and there was a glowing entity that confronted me or whatever when I was out of my body, and he said he was the father. It wasn't until sometime late in 2014, almost 29 years later, that I realized that entity was actually Lucifer, and that he was the one who created these parasitic entities. He's the one that started all this garbage, and that he was not there to help me that night. He was actually there to confront me. However, he wanted me to believe that he was there to help me, that he was the Father and ultimately the Savior. And he really believes this, by the way. He's known by many different names. If you've read Zecharia Sitchin's work, he's known as Enki. He's also known as Oannes. And in Egypt, he was known as Ptah. But he currently has a show. He's producing it. I know people are going to think this is crazy when I say this, but he is producing a show about himself called Lucifer, where he hangs out he's living in Los Angeles now, and he's working with the Los Angeles Police Department to help fight crime. And he wants people to actually love him and see him as vulnerable and a victim. So this is not unique, okay? I was actually asked to watch that show before it even came on the air. I was alerted it was coming by a Luciferian, an outright self-avowed Luciferian. You got to understand, there's people who actually love him. They do worship him. I'm not one of those people. I was under the false pretenses for, like I said, Jerry, for 29 years. Part of my life was especially when I was in a critical situation, I would visualize him.
Oh, wow.
And because I called him Father. That's what he wanted. He isn't my father. I know he created this. A lot of this nonsense that's going on here is his doing. And he wants us to worship him. And everybody's familiar with Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. Pleased to meet you. Won't you guess my name? He was kind of playing that trick on me. He didn't want to tell me. All he said was, I'm the father, which is only a half-truth. Now, you're probably not familiar with this song. I'm sure most people aren't either, but there's another one. This is Lucifer actually speaking. It's a love song. Lucifer is asking for to be loved by someone fully. Realistically, he's asking this through Ozzy Osbourne, who also hung out in Malibu
now that guy's a psychotic. I couldn't believe the first time I saw him. It's like,
I know, but he's a very troubled individual.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he's been traumatized. He took a lot of drugs. He opened himself up to this level so he became a channel, just like most of these people in Hollywood. They think that they're writing the show Lucifer. No, they're being influenced to write the show for him as public relations, because he really wants us to love him.
Yes.
And to see him as a victim, and ultimately to see him as our savior. Now, in this song, I can't play it on the air because we don't have a license to do that, but if people are interested, type in Ozzy Osbourne N-I-B, Nativity in Black. And I've just got to tell you this one little brief part here. He says, now I have you with me under my power. Our love grows stronger now with every hour. Look into my eyes. You will see who I am. My name is Lucifer. Please take my hand.
That's spooky.
Well, no kidding, but it isn't scary, man, because I know this character. I've had dealings with him for a lot of years. And he is someone or an entity that suffers from multiple personalities. Now, why am I saying this? Because if you go to my website at unicusmagazine.com and click on articles, you're going to see a link there to something called Birth of the Archons. That was the second article that I wrote. And it'll explain to you, because we don't have time to go through it all right now, but it'll explain to you why I'm even saying that Lucifer or Enki is actually insane. And that, by the way, that's part of the show on Fox. He's seeing a psychiatrist.
Well, as bad as these things are, they're necessary, because there has to be a balance between good and evil, with us stuck in the middle between that balance to give us the free will to choose one way or the other. And every thought that you put in one way or the other gives energy to whatever that thought is in that direction, and it starts to manifest. So when a negative thought pops into your head, it's critical that you realize that not all thoughts that come into your head belong to you.
Right. And if you don't control your thoughts and emotions, someone or something else will. In this world.
You can step back and you can watch the thoughts flow into your head.
Right.
So you're the watcher, you're not the thought. You can see for yourself you're not the thought. So any negative thought that comes into your head about you is not your thought. That's them putting that in there to see if they can get a reaction from you. You have to counter that right away and go, this does not belong in my thought stream. Leave now. Well, so it's an active process of interfering with their insertions.
Look, it's not just that they are feeding off of us. I know that that's a big part of it. Well, the other component is that they are incapable of creating, because they've lost that. Either they never had it or they lost it when they fell from grace. So they use us. That's one of the reasons that they're in our consciousness, not in our mind, but our consciousness, which is a holographic database. It is searchable, as you were saying. It's sort of like a Google search. They go back through your entire history. It's not in your mind, your physical brain gray matter. It's part of your, some people call it the Akashic record, whatever, your soul book. So it's been made very clear to me that they will then implant thoughts that, if we act on them, ultimately is how they use us to create or manifest this crazy matrix that we're in right now. They need us to do that for them. So the more people that wake up and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to be calm, kind, and create something completely different, that this is negating their ability not only to control us, but to maintain or manifest and maintain the matrix.
Yeah, they want you to be afraid, and if you look at the television, you turn on the TV and what do you got? God. It's negativity, it's murder, it's disasters, it's war, it's like be afraid.
Constantly.
Constantly. If people weren't afraid and confused, this is going to have to come from the bottom up. It's going to have to be a grassroots movement of people who realize that their thoughts, all that come into their head, not all of them belong to them, and that they need to take an active part in pushing out the ones that don't belong in their thought stream, which are negative. These entities cannot produce negative emotional energy themselves. They have to make us generate it.
For them,
they do that for them. So they insert all this crap into our heads that gets us upset, and then this negative emotion is generated, and then they come and they suck it off. And you could feel that once you walked into some of these high custody prisons. As soon as those gates closed, you could just feel it. I mean, the negativity in those prisons was like a atomic generator. I mean, it was a hawk's trough for those things, and no good deed went unpunished in that prison. You try to do something good, and it would eventually come back and bite you in the butt. It was strange.
We're all being watched by these invisible entities. Just because they're invisible doesn't mean they don't exist. It's not purely our imagination. I'm not saying that some people aren't having hallucinations. We know that exists too. So you got to have to use some discernment here. But just to live in denial is really kind of crazy, because that just leaves you makes you more vulnerable. That's like saying I don't need to lock my door because there's no criminals in my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They do not want to be detected. Matter of fact, one of them, when I was speaking to them a while back, they said they were punished if they were detected. They were punished if they spoke to me, which was interesting. And the thing that they do not want to happen the most is what we're doing tonight, is exposing them as parasitic predators. Now, I had to be very careful with which patients I would tell this to, because I had to judge whether they could handle it and take and make use of that information. But as I approached the point I'd determine, okay, this gal can handle it or this guy can handle it. I'd start approaching the point and I'd ask them, are you hearing the voices right now as we're sitting here? And they would say no. And I would say, in 4 minutes, they're going to be screaming bloody murder, and this is what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you, I'm crazy, I'm full of crap, don't listen to anything I say. If you decide to stay, they're going to tell you to bolt out of here and get out of the ER. If you decide not to do that, they're going to tell you to attack me. And normally they go, oh, I won't do that, I won't do that. And I'd say,
yeah, right.
But they're going to tell you to.
Right.
So as I approached telling the patient that these things were parasitic entities and pointed out to them that every time they attacked, their energy level dropped to 0, and then tried to get them to understand that there was a 1-to-1 correlation between the attacks of these things and their voices and their energy dropping to 0, they couldn't make that on their own. I tried to get them to come to that discovery themselves, and they just couldn't do it. And I'd say, what would happen if you stuck your hand in a fire? What would be burning you? They didn't have any trouble with that. It's the fire. But I said, okay, if the voices have come to you 1,000 times and each time they came, you were drained of energy, where's your energy going? I don't know. They couldn't connect it. They just could not connect it. But when they did, they were furious with the voices. And the voices were furious with me.
Yeah.
So I can't hear them, I can't see them, but I can feel them. And,
right, but getting mad at them, but getting mad or trying to attack them on some level, lashing out at them, is actually a very bad idea. I found that out.
Well, what happened here, though, is the patient realized that they were being sucked dry.
Yes,
you would be mad if you realized that you had been sucked dry. You wouldn't calmly go, oh, yeah, that's okay, you can suck me dry.
No, of course not. Of course not. But I'm just saying
there was a split. There was a big split there. And they didn't want that split because now there was a force that they could see that has been victimizing them where they couldn't see that before.
Yeah, right. It's just like anything else in life. If you are unaware of a problem, you'll do nothing to resolve it. And that's why they want to remain covert or unknown or simply diagnosed as hallucinations when in fact they do exist. Hey, look, it reminds me of, and I've said this before on the show many times, and I'll probably say it many times more until people get tired of it, but Ephesians 6:12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places.
That's right on. That's right on target. Matter of fact, they hated the repetition of the 23rd Psalm. One patient told me it was like throwing worms on a hot frying pan to repeat the 23rd Psalm with them.
Well, do you have it in front of you or not?
Do you remember it? It was...
is that the Lord's Prayer? No, wait a minute.
No, it's the 23rd Psalm. Hold
on. Let's see what it says. I'll pull it up. Hang on. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not... Yes, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me besides the still waters.
He restoreth my soul.
He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Yes, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Oh, yeah, I'm glad you remember this. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
They hated that. They hated it. They hated it. They would go nuts. So in the early days when I couldn't get away with this at the state hospital because I'd be accused of upsetting prisoner or upsetting patients, and I'd end up in front of the psychiatrist again, for being a rebel. But in the prison, a psychotic patient complaining about a psych talking to him about his voices wouldn't even break the ambient noise level of the place. I mean, it just wouldn't even come to the surface. So I could push these guys as hard as I dared for information on what these things were doing to them and how they operated. So I collected a small group, maybe 10 or 15 that I had around me all the time that were willing to give me real-time information in our sessions as to what these voices were telling them is in response to what I said. or the different things, therapies we were trying to do to weaken them. And we started out with, there was a dentist, I think he wrote 20 Years Among the Dead, and he would give shocks to schizophrenic patients, shocks of static electricity.
Yeah.
And they hated that so much. They said it was like a giant thunderstorm. They would leave the person's body, and then the wife, who was psychic, would kind of pick up on them and then walk them into the light. And they would disappear at that point, which was very interesting. I couldn't use a shock thing. I mean, Dr. Van Dusen sending me all these advertisements for shock machines. I couldn't do that in the prison without getting fired. Closest thing I could find was a rubber band. So I started handing out rubber bands, because they would forget to say the 23rd Psalm when the voices came. Now, this is in the early days, and my thinking was, okay, if they don't like something, throw more of it at them, because they don't like it, So, right. And so I told them, okay, every time you hear the voices, snap that rubber band, and they will go away. And they did. It was enough of a shock to make the voices shut up for 5-10 seconds, enough time for them to remember the 23rd Psalm, and it was kind of like kicking them back. Mm-hmm. It certainly didn't stop them, but it was like a slap in the face, especially if they continued doing it. And then when the patient saw that they had some power over the voices, at least to just get them upset, that gave them some hope that they could fight back. Now, as we developed more and more efficient therapies to interfere with what they were doing, I would get reports from this small group of men that were giving me real-time feedback that their voices were getting very pissed at me. And I'm thinking, well, okay, they're stuck in these guys' heads. At that time, I was thinking, it was a mistake, I was thinking they were stuck in their heads and they could not come out of there to get me. Now, they might try to convince the patient to come and attack me, but they couldn't get me directly. So here I'm getting all these reports saying the voices are getting upset. And I'm like, okay, here's a hallucination getting upset at me. This does not wash. But even at that point, even though my denial system was in shambles, it was in shambles, I still maintained that it must be some figment of their subconscious mind that is doing this, because I did not want to believe in demons. I did not want to believe they were separate. I just didn't want to believe it. So I continued on and kept working with this one fella. And then one day, about 2 weeks later, he comes and he knocks on my door without an appointment. And he says, the voices want to talk to you. And I'm like, they want to talk to me? In like 15, 20 years of working with psychotic patients, this had never happened.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, come on in and, have a seat. Now, the week before this, the same guy turned around as he left the door and he said, you know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you? And again, I'm like, well, they're stuck in their head. They can't come and get me. And there's severe repercussions if they attack a staff. It's like a bunch more years in prison. So if they have any sanity at all, they're not going to do that. So he comes in, he said, the voices want to talk to you. And he sits down, he looks me in the eye, and I'm like kind of weirded out. And I said, well, okay, what do they have to say? And these words came out of his mouth. His voice deepened a little bit, and out came, you have no right to interfere with our way of life. Mm-hmm. Our way of life, plural.
Yeah, they're fighting for survival, Jerry.
Yeah, and then the inmate turns around and he goes, I didn't say that. that wasn't me who said that. Then I go,
oh my God.
Okay, and I'm like weirded out. Because now I'm being given a warning. It was kind of, okay, they're getting pissed. The guy says what I'm doing is dangerous, interfering with them with these different therapies we were developing that were working. And we were able to start getting full recoveries after a while. So he comes in the week after that, and I'm reading a passage by, I think it was Miguel Ruiz, where he's talking about these entities who are parasitic and suck our life energy. And it sounded just like the voices. So what I thought I would do would bring that book in, and I would call this inmate back in, and I would read him that passage and ask him what he thought about it. Because I was always talking to these guys. I mean, psychiatrists didn't want to talk to him. Nobody wanted to talk to him. Even my fellow therapist didn't want to spend any more than 20 minutes with him. And I'm finding him fascinating, spending 3 and 4 hours in with him. And everybody's going, "What's he doing in there?"
Right.
So, he comes in the next time. I bring out the book and I say, "Hey, I'd like your opinion on what this shaman has to say." So I started into it, and I got to the point to where they were energy parasites stealing our life energy. And he turns into a friggin' zombie. He's just staring at me, just frozen, staring at me, just stiff. And this electrical crackling sound just exploded from behind my head. It sounded just like an electrical arc welder on full blast. And it's like crack, 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 and it starts moving across the wall to my right and up the wall on my right side at a 45-degree angle toward the far corner. And it's just crackling away along the wall, loud. I can't smell anything. I can't see anything, and I'm looking at him and I'm going, he's going to attack me. So here I am going back and forth, looking at him, looking for the crackle, looking at him, the crackle. I don't see anything. I push my chair against the wall just in case he comes at me. I could kick him back because they always manned the medical unit with a female, which was worthless by the time she got there. Things were going to be decided one way or the other.
Yeah.
So that crackling continues, and it's lasting a long time. I mean, it's not like just a little burst. I mean, it just keeps going. It goes up the wall, and then it goes across the wall over his head, crackling along the ceiling. Crack, 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 crack. It hits the opposite wall to my left, and it starts at a 45-degree angle down toward me. And I look at him, and I said, "Do you hear that?" And he says nothing. He's just staring at me. And I'm, this is weird. What the hell is going on here? And the crackling continues. It's crack, crack, and I'm watching the crackle, and it just comes down the wall, and it jumps into a Rubbermaid trash can right by my left leg, and it's crackling in there. So I bend over, and I look in there, and there's nothing there. The inmate porter had cleaned it last night. There's nothing there except this crackling.
Yeah,
nothing. And I look at him, and he's just staring at me with that eerie stare. And I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And he slowly gets up, and he turns like a robot. He was very stiff. And he goes, "I gotta leave." And he shuffles out the door. And I go, "Yes, get out of here. Go." And keep going. Go. And, I'm like sitting there in shock, and I get up and I look at the walls, and I see nothing that would indicate that this had ever happened. There's no scorch marks on the walls. There's no evidence of anything, And I run out into the hall, and I look at all the other doctors' offices all down the way. They're all locked. There's nobody there. There's nothing that could account for this. Right. And I go back into my office, and I just cancel all appointments for the rest of the day, and it's like, I was stunned. And of course, there's nobody you can talk to. When this kind of stuff happens to them or me, there's nobody you can talk to without them thinking you're a lunatic. So here I'm seeing all this stuff about how these voices work, and they're attacking me. I can feel it. I'm interfering with them. There's this whole world going on that I can't tell anybody about. And in the meantime, I'm surrounded by psychiatrists.
Right. Now, didn't you tell me, if I recall correctly, that particular individual later told you that the voices were telling him to attack you, stab you?
Yes, that's exactly what after 3 months, I got the nerve to call him back and asked him, he came in, and after there was some small talk, I said, "Hey, you remember the last time you were here? Did you hear that crackling in the office?" And he said, "Yeah, but I'm surprised you did." So he's surprised I did. And I said, "Has that ever happened before?" And he said, yeah, it happens sometimes with some of my friends. The crackling starts, and I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I just ignore it. It usually lasts 10 or 15 seconds, but this lasted like more than half a minute. I mean, it wasn't like a short thing. And he said, I just ignore it, and they just kind of figure, they make some excuse for it, and the thing goes away. And I said, well, what were the voices telling you as you walked out the door that day? And he said, they were telling me to go get a shank, which is a prison knife, a homemade prison knife, and stick it in your gut. And after working with him for 6 months and bringing him along a good way, I was thinking, oh, he would never do anything like that. So I asked him.
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah. I asked him, well, why didn't you do that? And he said, because I couldn't find one.
Shank, he couldn't find a knife. Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether that was him telling me that or whether that was his voices telling me that.
Right.
But it was like cold. It was like, if I could have found one, I would have done it.
Or would have tried to do that.
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing I got to tell you, the electricity you're talking about, this is typical of what the Muslims call the jinn. They say they're born of fire that doesn't burn. Well, that would be electricity before they knew what electricity was. This is what these Bedouin-type nomadic people were trying to describe in words about something they didn't fully understand. So essentially these are electric beings, and that they are beyond our range of vision and hearing usually, but not always. And so they're operating covertly in plain sight, which sucks, but that's the way it goes. But that's, again, why we're talking about this, why you're working on the book, which I think you said you're making progress, right, at this point?
Yeah. So what we did is I started on a paper, and then the paper kept growing because we got asked by somebody at the University of Michigan and Maine who were doing a big paper on, trying to legitimize this kind of stuff within the academic community. And I'm going, they're going to get the crap kicked out of them, but Sherry and I are going to do everything we could to help them. So, that got distracted doing that. And then we started on one comparing Swedenborg's work. It was supposed to be a short paper with what the voices actually, what Van Dusen found and what I found. And we're trying to get that done right now. But my bigger book, I think I'm up to like chapter 5 right now. But I'm just going to sit down and write it because the writers group, they want it written like Gone with the Wind, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of reviews. But I got to get this information out. Yeah. I can't wait to make it sound like Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, you don't need to dramatize it. It's dramatic enough as it is. Just be honest, straightforward, whatever. One of the cases one of the contacts that you sent me, I believe his name is Dr. Kemal. From somewhere, maybe
Dr. Irmak, I-R-M-A-K, in Turkey.
Was that his first name? I thought his last name was anyway.
Kermal Irmak. He actually wrote in a kind of well-known journal about a shaman who was consistently curing schizophrenics of the voices. And basically all he was doing was suggesting to the medical community that he had witnessed this and that the cause of schizophrenia might not be a medical malady, but something spiritual.
Yes, I agree.
They attacked him all up and down and all around. They threatened the journal. They're telling the journal guy, why did you allow a piece like that to be published? You're going to bring us back to the Stone Age. And these are people that have no answers. They have no answers. They don't know what causes this stuff. They don't know anything about the voices. Their medications don't cure anything but are making them a fortune. They know nothing about this, and here they are, beating up somebody with an alternative explanation who's witnessed several cures. And I ended up in the same situation because when they found out that some of the schizophrenic prisoners I were working with their voices had disappeared, they no longer needed to be on their meds and they didn't want to take them. And they appeared to be normal. So it's like all of a sudden there was a lot of attention, and I thought they'd be happy about this, that the fact that this could be done. Look how much medication money that would save them if people were trained to do this. It was the exact opposite. I found myself up in front of the medical director, being accused of all kinds of, unapproved treatments. It's like, I got out of that with this by the skin of my teeth. I mean, they did not want this to come out. They were not happy with that at all. It was like I committed some giant sin in the prison system. Yeah. Well, again, these demonic entities they can't afford to be exposed. Now, this particular doctor in Turkey, I mangled his name, but he was very specific, like others have been, that these entities are with us at all times, that they, if I remember correctly from history, that they allegedly are older than us. They predate our coming to this world. And I think they mean by that, the, what do you call it? Physically, that they were here before the physical bodies were created for our souls to come inhabit. So go ahead. I think some of them might be, but there was a period of time where I was actually conversing with the voices like Dr. Van Dusen was doing. And what I found out is that there is a order to them, that they have ranks. Yes. So there was one time where I was working with one patient, and he had two voices in him, both of which I knew we could get rid of. So we got rid of those, and then all of a sudden, I could feel them. When they're gone, I could feel it. When they're gone, when one comes, I can feel it. So they couldn't lie to me about them being present. I couldn't see them, I couldn't hear them, but I could feel them. So we got rid of those two, and all of a sudden, there's a negative energy that's much stronger than those other two. And I look at the patient and I said, "What just happened?" Another one appeared. What happened? And he said, "That's their boss. He's the one over those other two." Yeah. And he wouldn't cooperate at all. But there was a rank to them, and what they told me is that, and I use this against them too, because once they speak to you, that's something you can use against them. Once they're discovered, that's something you can use against them. So, on some cases, I'd be talking to the voice, and I'm going, you don't belong here, and we're weakening you. We're going to eventually get rid of you. How about let's go, take a trip with me, and let's go look. You've been told that there is no light in you, right? And they would say, yeah, we were told that there was no light in us, and if we didn't do what these upper guys said, which was basically destroy some human they were assigned to, that they would cease to exist. Whoa. And if they got caught talking to us, they would be sent to the pit, and if they got discovered, there would be punishment. So I would say, okay, let's take a trip. Let's go inside of you, and let's go see if there's no light there. So I would imagine traveling with this entity down inside of him, and I'd ask him, do you see any light yet? No. Well, how about now? Yeah, and in most cases they would say, yeah, I see a dim orange light. And I'd say, well, you were told that you have no light inside of you. And I said, how do you feel about that lie? And they were furious about that. Of course. It was so strange. They were furious about it. And then I'd say, okay, come on down and let's go next to that light. And I said, stick your hand in there. Does that burn you? Most of them said no. One of them said yes, and I said, no, it doesn't. Put your hand back in there. And he goes, well, yeah, you're right, it doesn't. So they'd stick their hand in there, and I'd say, okay, keep going, and go all the way in. And they were very hesitant of that because they were taught to be afraid of the light. And I said, well, look, it's not burning you, it's not hurting you. Go ahead all the way in. And they were real hesitant. And I'd say, okay, listen, you've broke two cardinal rules. You've spoken to me and you've been discovered. If you go back to where you came from, they're going to beat the crap out of you. Right. Now, I can send you to a much nicer place. I can have somebody who come and get you. You won't have to deal with that, but you got to go all the way into the light. And then they kind of go, okay, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. They know what was going to happen to them if they went back. So they'd walk into the light. And then I'd say, ask for somebody to come and pick you up and carry you to a better place. Huh. And eventually somebody or something would appear. And I'd say, ask for somebody you trust that is on the other side that will come and meet with you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times a relative showed up and they'd reach out their hand, and I'd say, take their hand and go with them. You know what's going to happen if you go back here. You'll be in a better place. So once they left, that voice was gone.
Wow.
And it didn't come back. But if the person didn't do what they needed to do to keep these things away, which was basically start moving on a positive spiritual path, another one would come to replace it. So it makes me wonder how successful exorcisms are.
Oh.
But it wasn't just relatives that came. Sometimes it was a horse. Sometimes it was a dog. It wasn't just humans, which surprised me. Of course not. It was like,
no, because think about it. People have very strong emotional connections in a positive way to their pets or other animals in nature, which we've been divorced from increasingly, and I think it's causing a lot of issues.